Chevy's gonna make as many of these cars as they can sell. Chevy likes money. What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. Each week I'm gonna take you with me on my adventures in the world of cars. Let's get right into today's video. Alright, so I'm gonna talk about the C8 Z06 and I'm gonna try to bring a little bit of clarity to the absolute mess that has happened online with all the people trying to figure out what's going on with pre-orders, how do you get one, do you have to pay MSRP, all this stuff. So I've been taking some time wading through Facebook, forums, YouTube, and all the other outlets for the Z06 trying to make heads and tails of it. And so I think I've cut through most of the junk and I'm trying to distill this down so it's a little bit easier for anyone to understand. Alright, so it's been about 2 weeks since the C8 Z06 has been unveiled, and in that time the internet has literally turned into a burning dumpster fire. There's all sorts of misinformation out there. People are spending lots of time spouting off their opinions and their own personal thoughts, treating it as fact. I'm here to cut through all that and try to give you a little bit of clarity into what's going on. Alright, so for the first part of this video, I want to talk about the reservation system, or rather the lack thereof, that GM provides. GM doesn't let you reserve the cars. You are going through a dealership if you're going to buy one, and they can choose at will to provide a method to pre-order the car or get a reservation. And I should actually be really clear on this. Nobody is ordering C8 Z06s right now. Production doesn't start until March, April, May, somewhere in that time frame for 2022. And these are going to be released later in 2022 as a 2023 model and then some. So the first thing is there's a whole lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people trying to get MSRP. There's a lot of dealers trying to mark things up. Let me distill down kind of the two big players that I've found out about and give you a little bit of clarity here. So first, I'll use my own experience, MacMulkin, which is in Nashua, New Hampshire. That's where I have my pre-order in, and it was a super easy process. So you walk in, or through online, or call somebody, say, hey, I want to talk to the Corvette team. Within a few minutes, you're sitting down talking to someone. There's some very cursory paperwork where they get your information, $2,000. Once that's in, as soon as the check clears, you're officially on the list. They have an online system so you can actually see where your current place is. Deposit is fully refundable up until the point where an order is placed for the car, which is a pretty fair system. There's no real downside. You do not have to be in New Hampshire. You can order it from anywhere in the country and they can ship it to you. That's an additional cost, but compared to the markups that a lot of dealerships are doing, your local dealer may not be able to give you a lower price than MacMulkin. Big point to make up front, MacMulkin is MSRP for everybody for all Z06s. All you have to do is say, I want to get the car. You don't have to ask for MSRP. That is what you're getting. That is what they advertise. Pretty straightforward. And as of November 8th, the highest number I had heard of was 1,306. It's probably a little bit higher than that. That was a couple days ago. But by and large, you're going to be sub 2,000. You're probably going to be sub 1,500 if you want to get on the list. So reach out to MacMulkin. Worst case, you're going to be able to get your money back if you decide you don't want the car or if the wait is too long for you. Rest assured though, you're pretty likely to get a car if you get on this list. And the last thing I'll say is that MacMulkin is the second largest Corvette dealer in the country by volume. There's only one dealer that's a little bit bigger, and that's Ciocca, formerly Quebec, and we're going to talk about them right now. On to Ciocca. So Ciocca, formerly known as Quebec, is the largest Corvette dealer in the country by volume. They're about 9% greater in sales than MacMulkin as of the 2019 numbers. Not sure where they stand for 2020, but suffice it to say, those are the two big players. Everybody else is significantly smaller than them. Anyway, Ciocca didn't have quite as smooth of a process. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of back and forth. Corvette forum was full of people saying, hey, how do I get a deposit on the car? How do I get on the list? And there wasn't a lot of clarity. And so Ciocca's process was they were going to have a date, and I believe it was 11/2. I could be off by a couple days. But right around the start of November, where they were going to start accepting pre-orders for the car, or rather, put people on a reservation list to get orders for the car. They are also MSRP, and the idea was that you were going to wire money at noon. They were also going to have an on-site availability for people to talk to a Corvette specialist, get signed up, fill out the paperwork, drop off a check, and they were going to do the process simultaneously. Their process didn't go nearly as smoothly. So one of the big problems was that they decided that they were going to offer these at the same time. Now what that means is, realistically, if you show up in person, and there were about 230 people apparently who showed up, you're going to be waiting in line, you're talking to someone, shake hands, small talk, okay, I want to put a deposit in. I'm sure they were trying to move things along, but the gist of it is that transaction did not happen as fast as somebody wiring money. So you ended up with thousands of people online sending in their wire. You have people in person who waited hours in line to then try to get a car, and these are all going into the same queue. Now what Ciocca said is that basically anyone who put a deposit in on the car, the timestamp that they are going to use to determine the order that you are in line is when was the money cleared? When did the money show up? Whether it was a check, a wire, or anything else, when were you officially signed on the dotted line and that they had the money in the account? For anyone who wired money, things didn't get any better. Unfortunately, everyone was wiring in money. They were getting their timestamps back from their bank and thought, hey, great, I got a good spot in line. Instead, what happened is Ciocca seems to have taken the timestamp that their bank said when money cleared. So they would get your name, you still have to go and fill out the paperwork, but the time that the money actually hit their account, that was the timestamp they're using. Now that overall sounds pretty fair because they are the single entity, whereas everybody else, when they're sending it in, they don't know how soon their bank is going to actually wire the money. They may have filled out the transaction on their bank side, but did that money actually end up in Ciocca's accounts at a certain point in time? So anyway, sifting through all this, what it sounds like is a lot of people got a timestamp from their bank saying, yes, we've wired the money. But what a lot of banks apparently do is they wait until there's a certain number of wire transfers to happen, and they batch those. They send them in a group to wherever they are on the internet. It's not all going to be for somebody depositing on a car. There's a lot of kind of normal day-to-day transactions that happen. And so the next step in this approach was that Ciocca said, we're going to send out batches of emails as we process through all the timestamps to let you know what position you are in line. And actually, all of this week, people have been getting these emails. Now, this is where the frustration comes in, is that a lot of people send in their money. They're like, at 12:01, my bank said that my money cleared and went, only to find out that they're like number 1,000, number 1,500, number 2,000 in line, and that Ciocca's receipt of that money happened at a different time than what they were told by their bank. It sounds like Ciocca is going by the numbers they got from their bank, but it's not super clear. There hasn't been a ton of communication about it, and everybody's getting really upset. Everyone's really hyped for the car. The dealership's trying to find a way to keep it fair for everybody, and you're getting multiple different ways that someone could get the money to them, and those are all sort of merging together, and it's resulting in some people who got really good numbers but weren't necessarily the first person to wire something in according to their clocks. But Ciocca says, no, you're number 50 in line. So that's a bit of a mess. So the highest number I saw in the online forums of people saying, hey, this is the number I got at Ciocca, was 2,073. There's probably quite a bit after that. Rumor has it that they were accepting up to 5,000 reservations for the car. Ciocca's own website right now says they're no longer accepting deposits. So if you're following along, that seems like a bit of a mess. But okay, maybe it's doable, maybe you can deal with it. It got a little bit more complicated. As people were getting their confirmations, they were also getting messaging from Ciocca saying, okay, you put 2,000 down, but in order to make sure that you're really serious, we need another 3,000. So now all these people now have to put another 3,000 down on top of what they thought was already the top of their deposit. They didn't have to put anything else down. But there are a lot of people who are also upset about that they weren't told up front that they would have to pay 5,000 up front. They thought just 2, so that also contributed to some of the mayhem. For what it's worth, Ciocca also was saying that they would do MSRP for everybody who got on the list, so that's at least good, but some people are going to be unhappy that they're waiting a long time. One of the next big problems for this car specifically, or really any kind of higher end car where there's a lot of demand and somewhat of a limited or time-constrained supply, is markups. And certainly there are a lot of dealers taking advantage of this. There's actually a bunch of posts online and there's a bunch of people talking about, hey, I want to get a C8 Z06, where can I go to get it at MSRP? At this point, if you want first model year, you're not getting it for MSRP. That's just how it is. A lot of smaller dealerships who only get an allocation of 1, 2, maybe 5 cars at most, they're all marking them up. 5,000, 10,000, 15, 25, as much as 50,000 seems to be pretty common, and that they're able to find people to pay for it. If they're only going to get 5 cars, they can mark them up to 50K, and somebody's going to pay that. That's just sort of the unfortunate nature of the business. On top of that, there's one really enterprising dealership who seems to think they're really clever in Maryland, who at least from some of the screenshots posted online, is doing 200K markup on the Z06. I went and verified that it's a real dealership and that the person and email that came from exists. So do with that what you will. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. And it's unfortunate because the people who actually want to own the car and enjoy it, the enthusiasts, those are the ones who get screwed out of this. All right, so now that some of the bad parts are out of the way, I've got kind of two areas which I'm excited about. First is production volumes. So there's a lot of stuff going around that people are saying, well, there's only 10 or 12 engine builders and the GM isn't going to add any new engine builders, and so that's going to limit the maximum number of cars. Do you really think that with a car with a high margin like the Z06 that Chevy's not going to train more people to build engines and they're not going to run the production lines as fast as they possibly can? Chevy knows that they need to strike while the iron's hot, but also keep in mind that the C7 Z06 had a hand-built engine, and they had at least 18 builders for that car. Given that there is much more interest for this car than for the C7 Z06, it wouldn't shock me if they had somewhere between 20 and 30 builders at a minimum. They certainly have the tooling and the space available for it. So say what you want, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to have more, and that Chevy knows this car is in really big demand. Why wouldn't they capitalize on it? So throughout all of C7 Z06 production, the average volume of cars that they built of the Z06 was about 8,000. But at their peak year, they actually made 14,275 cars. That's a fair number. So they are certainly capable of that and then some, knowing the popularity that this car has, the buzz that it's generating, and that they're really trying to prove a point to some of the more exotic competition from Europe. It wouldn't shock me if they're able to hit those numbers or exceed them pretty easily. And so my last point, the last thing that I'm really excited about, and one of the reasons that I'm happy that I have my deposit with MacMulkin, is that MacMulkin has a very good chance of being among, if not the top dealer for Z06s going forward. They're number 2 in the country for Corvette sales, and according to Corvette Forum, there are a couple different places where people are saying that the owner of the dealership has actually on record saying that they sell more Z06s than Ciocca. Take that for what you will, but at a minimum, they're number 2. So I saw a really interesting post on Corvette Forum. I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit. So on any given average year, MacMulkin tends to sell about 3% of all Corvettes. Now, if we take that same kind of ratio and we say, well, if it's 3% of all Corvettes, and they are doing well at Z06s, let's just assume that they're making 3% of all Z06 sales. And let's take that banner year of 14,275 cars. What does that actually mean? So what that means with those numbers is they could do as many as 428 Z06s in a single year. But let's step back a little bit. If they are saying themselves that they've actually sold more Z06s than Ciocca with the C7, so if we bump that up a little bit and say that they're doing 4% of all Z06s and they're a little bit higher than Ciocca, that would actually put us with that 14,000 banner year, that puts us at 571 Z06s per year that they can sell. And one of the other ways we can look at it is that let's just say if we have an average year and there's 8,000 Z06s made, that puts MacMulkin at 240, or at 4%, 312 Z06s. Compared to if it's the 14,000 year, which is sort of their banner year, that would be anywhere from 428 to 571. So anyway, that sounds pretty good to me. That sounds like a significant number of cars through the dealership where I have a reservation. Now keep in mind, you can go and get a reservation there where you can't at Ciocca. And for the couple $1,000s it takes to ship the car from MacMulkin to wherever you live, that's still less than a $5,000 markup, a $10,000 markup. So I would say if you're interested, MacMulkin might be a good place to reach out. So the bottom line is don't freak out about this. There's a lot of people who are pretty upset online and they're panicking that they're not going to get the car. Chevy's going to make as many of these cars as they can sell. Chevy likes money. That's their number one goal, is money, and maybe second would be customer satisfaction. So don't worry about it. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'm really curious to hear about this. Certainly the internet's ablaze right now, but hopefully I've brought a little bit of clarity to this overall kind of the mess of the reservation system. Now, a couple things. Upcoming videos, I've got a bunch of stuff about the C8 Z06. I've got some slightly insider info that I'm going to share probably in my next video or two. So I hope that was helpful and hopefully cut through all the BS and actually brought you to something that was useful to learn about this C8 Z06. There's a lot of misinformation. I've been skimming the stuff on Facebook and YouTube and Corvette forum, and there's a lot of junk on there, but there are some helpful nuggets. There are some people who are optimists like me who think, hey, let's be patient, let's not freak out. This isn't the only interesting car that's come along and has had something like this happen. So that's my mindset. If you get a chance, please consider subscribing. That really helps me out. I'm a small YouTuber. I don't make any money doing this, and it really helps me build my channel. And until next time, Fred out.